Good afternoon. I am Dr. Kim Everett. I am a leadership developer, an educator, and facilitator. My work sits at the intersection of identity, discernment, and sustainable professional practice. For more than 25 years now, I have designed and facilitated learning experiences in higher education, nonprofit, corporate, and community-based environments. What draws me to the work is not simply the application of theory, although I do love teaching about theory as well. It is the question of how leadership is embodied, especially within high pressure communities like those represented here in AMSA. This session today we will share what we learned through the Empowered Leadership Pilot. Our time together will resemble the time spent with that cohort. It is reflective by design. And even though the format is virtual and I won't be able to hear your responses in real time, there will be moments when I intentionally pause. When that happens, I encourage you to resist the instinct to multitask. Really use those pauses and sit with the questions. The pauses are intentional. The questions are invitations. And the space you create in these moments is an important part of the work. So thank you for the opportunity to be here. Leadership in crisis prevention and intervention work is often described in terms of skill, policy knowledge, compliance standards, response protocols, measurable outcomes. And all of that is important. But in high pressure environments, what matters just as much is how responsibility is carried. When it comes to leading in alternative response programs, the question is not whether or not someone is capable, typically. The real question is whether or not they are aligned. As such, most professional development focuses on execution, and far less attention is given to the ways that identity, lived experience, and inherited expectations shape decisions under pressure. Urgency becomes normal in these high-stakes environments. And as a result, reaction can begin to masquerade as strength. But when urgency dominates, decisions are made quickly and decisively, because that is what the environment rewards. But what is far less examined is what's beneath those decisions. Think about a recent decision that you made under pressure. What influenced you? Was it external expectations, institutional norms, a fear of how others would perceive you? Or were you moving from a space of clarity or conviction? Take 10 seconds and really sit with that. As you reflected, did you hear your own guidance or the expectations of others? Did you feel aligned or was something off kilter? Leadership as an internal practice asks leaders to become aware of that very layer, not to slow down operations, but to strengthen your discernment. Around this time last year, I was invited into a conversation with AMSA leadership. A recent member survey illuminated a very interesting pattern. They found that women of color leading crisis prevention and intervention programs were navigating layered demands with environments shaped by dominant norms. Rather than respond broadly and provide a leadership experience for all, AMSA chose to begin specifically. As a result, a focus cohort engaged in a six-session reflective experience. That choice was specific, and that choice was intentional. What emerged was not niche, it was clarifying. We discovered that even highly capable leaders had to negotiate how much of themselves they could bring into their workplace. Several described having to distance themselves from intuition, relational care, and collaborative approaches, not because these qualities are ineffective, but because professional models of leadership often privilege speed and authority, expressed in very particular ways. When they were provided a structured space to examine those internalized models, things really shifted. Leaders began asking, is this my voice or is this someone else's expectation? Is this aligned or is it inherited? This pause strengthened discernment. The resulting awareness increased their steadiness, and clarity began to influence their actions. Now you consider this. What influences have most shaped your professional behavior and identity? Has it been your training, mentorship, perhaps the culture of the institution in which you work? Or maybe it's just the crisis-driven nature that creates the urgency. Think about a time when you felt most aligned, not just effective, not getting the job done, but aligned. When you felt like you were in your zone of genius and doing the thing that you were created to do. As you bring that picture to mind, I want you to observe what was present. Did you experience steadiness, increased clarity? Was there congruence between your values and your actions? Now let's look at the other side of that coin. Think about a time where things felt misaligned and really hone in on what was different. Typically, the difference between those two experiences is not technical skill. It is the ability to hear and heed one's own inner compass and take direction from within. This shift did not happen quickly within the group. First came the awareness that these inherited models do exist and do shape our practice. Then came ownership. Participants began recognizing not only how inherited norms shape them, but how they themselves were continuing to reinforce these norms. At one point, one of the participants said, I now choose to reward and encourage others in ways beyond how I was trained and rewarded myself. And then there was the concept of sustainability. Many entered the experience believing that endurance was just a part of the responsibility of a leader. High capacity, high responsiveness, and high availability. But with reflection, another way of thinking emerged. Without this space, there can be a lack of clarity. And without clarity, everything feels urgent. But with the clarity that emerged, pressure and priority became distinguishable. Furthermore, the idea of responsibility of a leader was reframed. It moved from being thought of as carrying a weight to becoming stewardship. Weight exhausts, whereas stewardship organizes. Relational intelligence was reclaimed as a strength. That includes the ability to sense dynamics, to anticipate impact, and to read the silence. These are not soft skills. They are advanced perceptual capabilities. And over time, the question shifted from how am I performing leadership to how am I inhabiting leadership? Again, I ask you to think about these questions. Where might endurance be disguising itself as effectiveness in your work? Where might inherited models still be shaping your decisions and actions? And where might discernment foster greater sustainability? There was one additional layer that proved essential, and that's community. Sustainability is rarely achieved alone. The most significant shifts occurred not in private reflection, but when those reflections were shared and witnessed. Structured community created accountability. It normalized vulnerability, and it made personal reflections more visible. Community functioned as a mirror. In high-pressure environments, isolation is common. Even when surrounded by your team, there may be very few spaces for you to examine doubts or tension safely in the work. Sustainability requires this sort of carved out space. It requires intentional space. Space where urgency can temporarily be suspended. Consider this. Where in your professional life do you have structured space to examine how you carry responsibility? We're not talking about operational meetings or supervisory check-ins, and most definitely not in the crisis debriefs, but real space for reflection. Reflection deepens when witnessed. Alignment stabilizes when it's shared. And sustainability is strengthened when the work does not have to be carried alone. This pilot demonstrated something simple but profound. Clarity is not optional in high pressure environments. It is foundational to sustainability. Yes, technical expertise matters, and operational competence most certainly matters. But without examining how decisions are shaped by identity, by experience, by expectations, and by our own narratives, inherited models will quietly take the lead. Leadership as an internal practice is a discipline. It requires awareness, it requires pause, and it requires courage. The Empowered Leadership Program is designed to give you just that opportunity. I am forever grateful for the 7 women who participated and the AMSA leadership for allowing me and inviting me into this journey. I hope you will consider joining the next cohort or at least committing to creating your own spaces to practice leadership from the inside out. I look forward to engaging with you during the live Q&A and hearing what surfaced for you in real time. But for now, take care and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks.